Good morning, and thank you to everyone who has been a part of our SUUF family through the years. From meeting in a side room at the Church of the Red Rocks, to the Elks Lodge, to the beautiful synagogue, to the hub, and now to our home on YouTube and Zoom. Changing times, changing locations, from office space to cyberspace. We are still here. 27 years later, and we're going strong. I think it's because it's the people that matter, that make the place. And even though I'm still dreaming about having our very own building one day, I'm quite happy being in this space right now, because you're here. Just look at what we have and keep it in your heart. That makes a pretty good home.
As we rise amid the darkness of winter and forge into the new world, light lead our way. As we go about our work, as we engage in dialogue, as we seek to listen, light lead our way. As we pause amidst the stressful holiday season to breathe for a moment, light lead our way. As we gather in reverence for life, for miracle and mystery among our community this day, light lead our way.
When blossoms blow and meet the snows upon our wheaten earth, was born a child of Christmas rose, the King of love and light. The angels sing, the shepherds sing, the grateful earth rejoice. The light is blessed birth,
Please recite with me our shared affirmation of mission. This fellowship is a welcoming, diverse, and nurturing beloved community that promotes progressive religious thought and practice to create a more loving, just, and sustainable world.
Christmas tree, oh Christmas tree, how lovely are your branches. Oh Christmas tree, how lovely are your branches. In beauty green will always grow through summer sun and winter snow. Oh Christmas tree, how lovely are your branches. Oh Christmas tree, your beauty green will teach me. Oh Christmas tree, your beauty green will teach me that hope and love will ever be the way to joy and peace for me. Oh Christmas tree, your beauty green will teach me.
In this holiday season, throughout the year to come, and always in our lives, may we know we are loved. May we share the love we have, and may we be the love we wish to see.
Oh, Tannenbaum. Every year, when my mother and I head out to buy a Christmas tree, my father grumbles. His grumbling, we know, is an act. It will make a mess, he cries, and it cost a fortune. If my father had his way, we would put tinsel and lights on our fiddle-leaf fig tree, and each year he asks us to do just that. Of course, my father is right. The tree always makes a mess. We do find needles in the carpet well into February, and it is expensive. Fresh trees in New York City cost more per foot than real estate in Tokyo. However, Mom and I are never dissuaded from our mission by Pop's arguments, and each year, year after year, we head out to find our tree. Mom tells me the same story every year as we walk to the avenue where our tree salesman displays his wares. It is about friends of my parents who would go out very late on Christmas Eve and rescue a tree that had been left on the lot unsold. The story has it that they would search for the homeliest tree of the ones left. Then they would take it home and decorate it with the wife's box, fur wraps, and feather boas. Mom and I are less exotic when it comes to decorating our tree. We prefer the old, familiar decorations dug from a box shelved at the top of a closet. These old colored balls, lights, and haggard tinsel are our embellishments of choice. Each year, we also have the pleasure of discovering a few family treasures buried in that box, such as the Snowman who makes his annual appearance. This creation was a Montessori project from my childhood, molded out of white dough, who collapsed a bit when we cooked him, which I guess we were not supposed to do. Consequently, he looks a bit like he is melting. What's more, for some reason only a child can explain, I painted him Christmas red. His place each year is in the creche beside the baby Jesus, where he stands in for a wise man who was lost somewhere along the way. If I thought our family was the only one with strange and wonderful traditions, I would be both saddened and embarrassed. Yet I know the truth. All over this nation and all over this world, there are families pulling silly little things out of boxes, things their children made long ago, things that mercilessly were never destroyed. Families are telling stories only they can appreciate. Families are being families in all their delightful idiosyncrasies.
My sermon today is entitled The Perfect Imperfection of Charlie Brown's Christmas Tree. During our years living in Concord, Massachusetts, the Zucker family eagerly looked forward to visiting one of the farms in the nearby countryside to pick out a freshly cut Christmas tree. Our favorite was a place called Kirkabit Farm in Acton, where we could indulge in eggnog and freshly made cider donuts while they bundled up our supple, deeply scented evergreen and lashed it to our minivan. One December, though, 1995, I reckon, we decided with altruistic zeal to support the local Boy Scouts and purchase our tree at the village parking lot where they had set up their outpost. Onto the lot we ambled enthusiastically, ready to choose some lush spruce or Scotch pine and cart it off to our Victorian farmhouse on Main Street. But the selection was anemic at best, and we decided we were going to skedaddle off to Kirkabit Farm anyway, when a hopeful Boy Scout, twine in hand, greeted us near the entrance with the most endearing grin. "Merry Christmas," he spouted. "Which tree do you guys really, really like?" Oh my, how to brush off this adorable boy, this dedicated lad with any grace whatsoever. So we did stroll about the lot with him, and we happened on a tree that was about the right size for our living room and was not utterly awful. It was a sturdy Douglas pine, which we favored, but one side had been smushed in as if a giant had wiped his boots there and then just stomped down on the tree, and the top looked like some critter had been gnawing on the branches. But we bought the tree, figuring we could put that side in the back, weigh it down with some heavier ornaments, and none would be the wiser. We trimmed off the top so that the angel would stay put. We made 100 corny jokes about that slightly defective tree while we were setting it up and decorating it. And not surprisingly, we came to love this tree as we fussed over its care and made sure it didn't dry out or fall over. Its imperfection and its vulnerability became its beauty to us, and we talked about that tree for years to come. Mind you, it wasn't as pathetic as this little tree, the replica from the classic animated film, A Charlie Brown's Christmas. As you can see, it's not much to look at. Puny, spindly, bent over, with a lone scuffed ornament. But this vulnerable little tree comes to represent something quite profound for the children in Charles Schulz's Peanuts neighborhood and offers us valuable but simple wisdom for a Christmas reflection. Charlie Brown's Christmas, the beloved film, it debuted in 1965, making this its 55th anniversary. Many of you probably know this story by heart, and if not, this little tree might jog your memory. As it opens, Charlie Brown explains that he feels down because Christmas has become too commercial, too crass, and he's lonely. There are no cards in his mailbox. He's experiencing what we would call a blue Christmas. Lucy persuades him to direct the Christmas play, and Charlie and Linus go off in search of a tree to set the stage. The lot is full of fake aluminum trees that are painted silver and orange and other colors found nowhere in nature. Eventually, they do come to a real tree, the only one still standing, and Charlie Brown remarks that he didn't even know they still made wooden trees. Of course, nobody has purchased this tree. It's a mess and hardly conforms with the Currier and Ives standard. It's unwanted, left behind, overlooked, unloved, abandoned, unappreciated, and forgotten. So this scrawny little Christmas tree is an unlikely choice. But what does Charlie Brown say? He says, I like this tree. I see promise in this tree. So he and Linus carted back to the play rehearsal where the taunting children ridicule him. You blockhead, they say. You mess everything up, Charlie Brown. Crestfallen, Charlie Brown removes the tree and he decorates it in his backyard. He places a single red glass ornament on one of the flimsy branches, and the entire tree bends over under its weight. Now thoroughly disheartened, Charlie Brown shuffles away. But meanwhile, all the children have followed him and the little tree. They spring into action, and they decorate it. Boy, do they decorate it, using the abundant ornaments pilfered from Snoopy's flashy, prize-winning doghouse. In a few moments, the tree is radiant with color and light. Someone says, all it needed was a little love. Charlie Brown returns and he's amazed, and everyone joins hands, encircling the tree, and sings. We're living unusually trouble-free, blessed lives in the midst of a pandemic, social unrest, and a political meltdown if we do not relate in some way to this tale or to Charlie Brown's tree itself. Realistically, though, many of us, some of us at least, do relate all too well. Given the burdens of 2020, we may feel a bit bent over, weighed down, a little more than frayed around the edges, sad, blown around, laughed at, put down, demoralized, lonely, particularly in isolation, misunderstood, anxious, disappointed. More than a few of our dried out needles might be heard tinkling to the ground. Perhaps we've also become bright and radiant like the tree when we've been blessed with the generous acceptance of others or the love of somebody close to us. How fortunate are we if we have friends like Linus to walk with us in life's journey, especially when we feel like a tired little sapling. Linus. He's a pint-sized Zen master who comes up to us and gently wraps his baby blue blanket around us and seems to grasp simple happiness and just get us in our vulnerable imperfection. As we celebrate together this complicated Christmas season, we can consider how Charlie Brown embodies the radical hospitality of the human Jesus, who kept company with many people who were shunned and vilified. This human Jesus, the one who is celebrated, respected, and admired by Unitarian Universalists, for him, everyone was welcome. Tax collectors, poor people, Roman soldiers, lepers, and those with disabilities, Samaritans, women, even criminals. For Jesus, every person was a visible and redeemable person. A Christian colleague of mine has noted, using his theological language, but you can substitute whatever similar words of meaning resonate for you. He says that God has a fondness for what's fragile. This means us. He writes, Advent tells us that God came to us and comes to us still with perfect vulnerability. This presence is to be found among what is fragile, including us, ourselves, when pain and loss have left us feeling less than whole, when we are experiencing scarcity rather than abundance. It comes to us as a child. It chooses to take on human vulnerability by coming to us as a child. Yet this vulnerability can also access our inner strength. A plot point in the film that I never noticed on my many viewings until I was watching it and pondering this sermon is the moment when Linus drops his ever-present iconic security blanket near the end of the film as he recites a passage from Luke to proclaim the real meaning of Christmas. What to make of this in our more humanistic UU vernacular? I would argue that Linus feels safer, more secure in his community now that compassion and acceptance has come alive among his once grumbling and sniping Peanuts tribe. And this is true for us as well. Today, on the verge of Christmas, if we feel like that scrappy little overlooked tree, and who doesn't these days, or like Charlie Brown, depressed and dampened by commercialism, or we're bereft of friends, we can foster community, because it is in community that our full humanity is released and embodied, vulnerabilities and all. We can drop false security blankets and lean into our own renewable faith of universalism, feeling worthy and welcomed as the perfectly imperfect people we are. Just as Charlie Brown affirmed that even the scrawniest Christmas tree was lovable, the Universalist said that everyone was worthy of God's love and mercy. Charles Schulz was not technically a Unitarian Universalist. He was a disaffected Minnesota Lutheran who had come to adopt a small U universalism that meshed with social liberalism. Schulz was deeply concerned with the commercialization of Christmas and yearned for respect for the real meaning of the holiday. He wanted the project that he and Lee Mendelson were developing to reflect that. So this seemingly straightforward animated classic has many embedded messages regarding faith and a universalist embrace of the downtrodden and the outcast. Schulz has shared that readers saw his Peanuts universe as a vehicle for teaching people how to be human. The characters have modeled the ability to learn from relationships, to compassionately acknowledge imperfection in themselves first and in others also. Just like Charlie Brown and his tree, parallel characters in a timeless and charming morality play about the healing balm of acceptance for the vulnerable, hopeful people, and for the fragile saplings alike, lopsided and waiting to be chosen on a wind-blown parking lot. Charlie, our erstwhile universalist, and most definitely not a blockhead, gets it right when he says, I like this tree. This tree has promise. All it needs is a little love. That's right, Chuck. Just like us. When I was writing this sermon, I found a small poem that I feel captures the essence and the simple spirit of this story. And it goes like this. Fall snow, dream night, shine tree, fire be bright. Carolers sing, bells chime, heart remember Christmas time. Peace prevail, world rest. You friends, be blessed. Be blessed.
Faith, hope, love, these three I offer you this season. Faith that living affirms, hope that caring illumines, love that matters more than anything. Faith, hope, love, these three, not as gifts I offer them, for they are not mine to give. They are yours and mine to share, humbly, with one another. Fumbling, we hold their promise in our hands. Faintly, we speak the trembling words. Faith, hope, love, these three I offer you this season.
Now is the time for silent meditation.
We have been warmed by fires we did not build. We have drunk at wells we did not dig. In gratitude of our many blessings and many needs, this morning's offering for this community will now be received.
The Invisible Christmas Tree by Carla Kelly. When my husband lost his job at a southern university, we tried to hold things together during the ensuing legal battle. Martin did some substitute teaching and worked as a van driver for a local ophthalmologist and ward member. I was in graduate school and had a part-time job. And to say that money was tight and hope was slim was no exaggeration. With 2 daughters still living at home, we were doing the best we could through this struggle. I was especially concerned about Christmas time. As the season drew near, I asked our daughters if they wanted one more present or a Christmas tree. Naturally, they wanted both. I stared at a light-colored wall in our family room and came up with a bold plan. I would create a Christmas tree out of no tree. This from the woman who has never met a Relief Society craft project she couldn't turn into a disaster. My strengths lie elsewhere. I bought a roll of fishing line for $3. And a box of clear push pins for $1. Then borrowed a neighbor's ladder and tacked the fishing line for each ornament to the ceiling at varying lengths so they came out in an approximate tree shape. Underneath the amazing display, I put the usual tree stand and filled it with water, which meant my sense of humor had resurfaced. Everything was there, except the tree. And who needed an old tree anyway? The effect was nothing short of breathtaking. The fishing line blended into the beige background of the wall, and the ornaments appeared to be hanging in the air. I had never seen anything like it. On the top of the tree, that is the ceiling, I tacked the cornhusk angel. Our next door neighbors were properly impressed with my efforts. One of them said he'd figure out a way next year to use fiber optics to add Christmas lights. He didn't, but our oldest daughter constructed her own air tree later and had lights on it. Another brought some wooden soldiers that were light enough to hang from fishing line. The greatest gift I received from the famous air tree was the return of my optimism, larded with humor. Just think of it. There weren't any pine needles to vacuum, and no one was allergic to fishing line and push pins. The cats were happy to bat around the ornaments without a real tree in their way. Total win. The famous air tree became a family tradition. When times improved, I asked the girls about buying a real tree again, since we could afford one now. No dice. They wanted the famous air tree. The tradition continued for nearly 10 years, until I got tired of climbing up and down the ladder to stick push pins in the ceiling. The legacy of the famous air tree continues, though. I always hang a few of Denise's little wooden soldiers on the current artificial tree, because I never want to forget the hard times and the love, and the concern of our neighbors, including another family friend who brought a turkey dinner to us on Christmas Day. That season of the first famous air tree became an anxious time made lighter by friends and faith.
We extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this space. May it guide your way until we are together again.